What's going on? Welcome to the Endgame. I'm Thad Brown. This is Rochester First. You are watching on a Monday, day after the Bills dropped a terrible loss to the Miami Dolphins. I am going to be with you for the next hour or so. We will talk all about that game. It is red alert time for Bills fans. That's why we are all red in the studio today after what happened against the Dolphins. Got some breaking news, a couple different pieces of breaking news today to tell you about. Number one, and this one actually just came over a few minutes ago. According to Jordan Schultz, I believe is Yahoo Sports. He's a guy we all follow for news. I don't know what he actually works for. Let's see. Jordan Schultz, NFL insider, does his own thing. All right. He says that Dalton Kincaid is week to week with the hamstring injury. Of course, Kincaid suffered the injury yesterday against the Dolphins, left the game in the third quarter. Hamstrings are a weird one. I was just talking with Caleb Carr about that. Caleb will be out here later. You see this later on in the show. Hamstring is the type of injury where there really isn't a definite time for when a guy is going to be healthy again. It's not like you break a bone, there's X amount of weeks everybody knows it takes to get better. You strain a groin, you sprain an ankle. There's not necessarily a set time period, but there's like a window. With hamstrings, you have it until you don't have it. And that's really how it works. I mean, Kincaid could theoretically play on Sunday. He could miss 4 weeks, and the Bills won't even use IR for him because they won't know he's going to miss 4 weeks until they get to the fourth week. So we will get the official word from Sean McDermott in about an hour or so. That's when he talks to the media today about all the things that went on yesterday in the game and going forward. So that is breaking news, piece number 2, actually, in terms of a chronological order. It might be the more important thing for Bills fans. But in terms of the bigger news in the NFL today, Brian Daboll got fired by the Giants. You probably heard about that already. Daboll let go by the Giants, kind of unusual. They're not a team that usually fires coaches in season. So, of course, immediately the Bills fan reaction is, let's bring him to Buffalo. This is the guy that's going to solve all of our offensive problems. Josh Allen loves him. He was great when he was here. He'll just be a senior assistant. We'll just put him on the roster, which is, of course, the fan opinion, the simpleton opinion. Let's just put him on the roster. We'll just add him to the team. It's no big deal. And yeah, I think Brian Daboll can help, but it's never just as simple as Brian Daboll's available. So let's put him on the roster. Let's put him on the coaching staff and see what he can do. The thing with Brian Daboll is that if you bring him to Buffalo, you can't just put him on staff and say, help. This guy has his own resume, his own career, his own reputation in the league. He's a guy that's a successful offensive coordinator, primarily because he worked with Josh Allen, but he's also been an offensive coordinator a number of different places. And obviously he's been a head coach. He's been to the playoffs as a head coach. So it's not just as easy necessarily to take a guy who is that accomplished and just drop him on a coaching staff and say, just help. Because the Bills already have an offensive coordinator. They already have a guy who's in charge of all that. And even though the Bills have someone who is the offensive coordinator, the offensive coordinator for the Bills, the guy who's really the offensive coordinator, it's whoever Josh Allen listens to. And there's only going to be one of those people. So if you bring Brian Daboll to Buffalo and Josh Allen, when push comes to shove, is going to listen to what Brian Daboll says, well, then Joe Brady's not doing the job anymore. That totally undermines what your current offensive coordinator is supposed to do. Now, if the Bills want to fire or demote Joe Brady, that's totally fine. I think in the grand scheme of what you do with offensive coordinators in terms of the amount of time he's had, the success he's had, and whether or not it makes sense to fire Joe Brady now, there's a decent debate about that. There's a good argument to be said that Joe Brady deserves more time. But it's also obvious to everybody that the Bills' passing game is not working and that you can't bring in a new quarterback right now. Not that anybody would want to. You can't bring in new receivers. We're past the trade deadline. I guess theoretically Gabe Davis could be that guy. You might, on accident almost, find someone on the waiver scrap heap that could be an extra body. But you're not materially changing the pass catcher group. So the only thing you can really change right now would be the offensive coordinator. And for a team that is desperate to find any answers with the passing game, I can understand why that option might be attractive, that you might decide, look, this is just not working, and we can't fix any of the other problems with it. And mind you, it is not just a Joe Brady problem. Watching the Dolphins-Bills film, I'm through the first half, the passing game issues are everywhere. It is the receivers not getting open. It is what Joe Brady is scheming up. But it's also Josh Allen not really seeing it great. So Joe Brady, if you get rid of Joe Brady, this doesn't magically fix all the problems the Bills have. But it could help if you wanted to move on. But if the Bills bring Brian Daboll in, firing or demoting Joe Brady is the only option. I don't think Brian Daboll comes in to sit around and help. If you want him to be an assistant, if you want him to just be some sort of advisor, what are you going to do when he says something that Joe Brady doesn't want to do? Is Joe Brady still in charge? And like I said, it almost doesn't matter what Joe Brady wants to do, what Brian Daboll wants to do, what Sean McDermott wants to do, what Brandon Beane wants to do, what James Cook wants to do, what the offensive line wants to do. The person who's calling the shots on offense is whoever Josh Allen agrees with. So if Joe Brady wants to do X and Brian Daboll says, I think Y is better, and Josh Allen agrees with Brian Daboll, then why do you even have Joe Brady doing the job anymore? Now, maybe it can work. Maybe the personalities will mesh. I don't know how well Joe Brady knows Brian Daboll. And in terms of the personality part with Sean McDermott, I think at this point, whatever issues Sean McDermott and Brian Daboll were rumored to have, it seems like those would not be in the way of this. I don't think Sean McDermott would say, I can't work with this guy, don't bring him in. This is really all about how Brian Daboll would fit in with the offensive staff. Now, if Joe Brady's good with taking a demotion to senior assistant, he stays on, Daboll does the job, Brady tries to get an OC job somewhere else. It's not the worst career path. I'm sure Joe Brady would not be super enthused about it, but I could see that being the way this goes. What I can't see happening is Brian Daboll sitting around in meetings, laughing and joking, occasionally throwing something out. Because either that's not really helping much, either Brian Daboll's contributing a couple of ideas here and there, and yeah, everything helps. But what are you doing if you're bringing that guy in to just kind of throw stuff out and put stuff on a wall? So either he's not really making a contribution, or he's the guy in charge and you got to do something with Joe Brady. Those are the only two paths I see for what the Bills can do with Brian Daboll. Again, I'm fine with giving that a run. Now keep that in mind. Even if you bring Brian Daboll in, I'm not ridiculously sure that's going to help. Like I said, you can't change who the receivers are. The Bills are kind of stuck with the personnel they have. We just talked about how Brian Daboll, his coordinator success came primarily with Josh Allen. You know why that is? Coaches are better when they have good players. It's really not a complicated formula. So if Brian Daboll comes here and works with the same receivers Joe Brady's been working with all year long, don't expect a whole lot of different results. Because unless the players change, you're not going to be able to re-scheme them up different ways. The problem the Bills have is not the X's and O's on the whiteboard. It's the Jimmies and the Joes, as the old phrase goes. They don't have enough guys who win. So even if Brian Daboll drops in and offers whatever expertise he has, and again, I think he would be a help, I would not sit here and, start making Super Bowl plans if I was a Bills fan. This team has problems that go beyond the offensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator is included in those problems. The other part of this is, too, remember Joe Brady, when he took over midseason for Ken Dorsey, he talked the next year about how, well, when you take over and you jump in the middle of a season as a new offensive coordinator, even as a guy who was already on staff, it's not so easy to just come in and remake the offense in your own vision. You have to kind of take the mold that's there and work around the edges a little bit. You can adjust things, slide things, move things, but you can't totally reinvent stuff. So even if you bring in Brian Daboll to be the new offensive coordinator, it's not going to just be the Brian Daboll offense. It's going to be Brian Daboll doing what he can to work with what Joe Brady's been doing here for the last 5 or 6 months, which again further mutes the impact that Brian Daboll can have. So I'm not against the idea. And I get why Bills fans would be looking at Brian Daboll as a guy who can help. I mean, at this point, with the Bills offense, it feels like we're at any port in a storm. That's the time, that's the spot we're at with this Bills offense. So Brian Daboll would be something that would help. But I don't think Brian Daboll comes in here and becomes the savior. Maybe. You know, it's not impossible to think this is still a team that beat the Chiefs and beat them handily. So they're probably not that far away. They're not as far away as they looked against Miami. That Miami game was a trash disaster. It's disturbing that we know that the Bills have that in the bag. But the team that beat the Chiefs is still in the locker room at one Bills drive. So does Brian Daboll come in, maybe adjust a couple things, find something else that works a little better with the offense? The other part of it that could work for the Bills is that whenever you bring in a new offensive coordinator, he's going to do different stuff teams haven't seen. So the fact that there are just new ideas that are not already on film can be a benefit. Bottom line, look, I'm fine with the Bills if they want to make Brian Daboll the offensive coordinator. I think you're fooling yourself as a Bills fan if you think Brian Daboll is going to come in, nestle cozily inside the offensive staff room, help Joe Brady out, and make a big difference. Either Brian Daboll is going to be in charge or he's probably not going to have much of an impact. And even if he is in charge, because he's coming in midseason, because he's got to make do with what Joe Brady has kind of already built going back to the spring, and because he's got to make do with the pass catchers the Bills currently have, I really think the impact Brian Daboll could have is going to be more limited than many fans are dreaming about this afternoon with the ideas of Brian Daboll genius and his relationship with Josh Allen dancing in their heads. But we'll see. Again, wouldn't be the worst idea. The other thing with the Giants move, by the way, and I want to hit this real quick. It is a little surprising that Joe Schoen is going to stay on as the general manager, apparently. According to the team, he will lead the search for the new head coach. Schoen and Daboll, I think because they both came from Buffalo, felt like they were tied to the hip. Now, the Giants don't have to fire both if they don't want to. And the Giants always have been, or usually have been, a team that is like the Steelers, where they want to stay with their coaches, their management team longer than most other franchises would. They believe in stability, and they've got all those Lombardi trophies there as evidence of their wisdom that fans are less likely to question them. If you are running the Jets or the Browns or an organization like that, the fans believe in what you say with zero confidence. So I think those franchises have to roll through GMs and head coaches more often. The Giants don't have to do that. The Giants have all these Lombardis, and this is how they do things. So they generally get away with hanging on to coaches or GMs longer. Regardless, the initial reaction I thought to Joe Schoen staying on as the GM was a little bit of surprise. Because of the two, remember, Joe Schoen is the guy who did the NFL Films off-season Hard Knocks and told everybody that the Giants, I'm paraphrasing, that the Giants did not need Saquon Barkley. And then he's gone on to Philadelphia. And, you know, last year was part of Super Bowl team set records. Hasn't been as good this year, but he's still a heck of a lot better than he was with the Giants and continues to make that move look like an incorrect one, to put it generously. So for Joe Schoen to keep his job when Brian Daboll doesn't, again, I'm a little surprised. It's also not like that roster is ridiculously good and Brian Daboll is just coaching it into the ground. The best players the Giants have on offense right now are all injured. Blake Neighbors and Cam Scadaboo are both out for the year. And frankly, whoever takes over that job as the next head coach probably won't get either one of those two guys fully healthy at all until 2027. So it's not a great looking job, even if the quarterback in Jackson Dart looks like he's in place. But going back to Schoen, I think he's benefiting from the way the Giants do business. And look, he certainly had a hand in bringing in Neighbors and Scadaboo and Jackson Dart. I do like both Daboll and Schoen personally. They're very good guys. I was happy when they got the jobs with the Giants to begin with. So I'm happy Schoen gets to keep his. At least one of the guys gets to keep his job. And I think Brian Daboll will land on his feet no matter where. And going back to Daboll for a second too, it wouldn't stun me if he ended up in Buffalo long-term somehow. If, you know, Joe Brady does get fired at the end of the year, if they want to fire him right now, it's also not out of the realm. The Bills turn this around on their own, maybe make an AFC championship run and Joe Brady gets a head coaching job somewhere else. if Brian Dable wanted to come back to Buffalo, I think there is certainly a world where that could happen. Again, I don't think Sean McDermott would stand in the way. So it wouldn't stun me if he was in Buffalo at some point, whether it be in the next couple of weeks or next year or even the year after that. But I think Brian Dable will have no problem finding an offensive coordinator job somewhere else. If he wants to go back to college, he coached at Alabama for a while, I would think he'd probably want to stay in the NFL. But I would be surprised if Brian Dable has trouble finding work. Remember, he took Daniel Jones to the playoffs. Now, Daniel Jones looks pretty good for the Colts too, but Brian Dable has been a head coach and an offensive coordinator in multiple playoff games. So he's got a pretty solid resume. He's going to be okay. All right, let's talk about the Bills and this game yesterday against the Dolphins, because there's so much about this that obviously was bothersome yesterday. The thing that sticks with me a little more today is the number of Bills players who, after the game, talked about how they felt the Dolphins wanted it more. The Dolphins came in with something to prove, chip on their shoulder. You heard all those cliches. And if you didn't hear them yesterday, let me show them to you right now. This is from the Bills locker room after yesterday's loss to the Dolphins.
We got to have better energy than them. They came out flying, and we just didn't answer the call right away. You get so far back on your heels that it's hard to recover. So we just got to come out quicker, faster, play smarter football.
It just was clear out there on the field. They just had a chip on their shoulder, and they wanted to go out and prove something, and definitely felt like they wanted it more. So we got to do a lot of self-evaluation and kind of get introspective with that, look at ourselves, and figure out how to go from here.
Division opponents play us extremely hard. Jets, Dolphins, and Patriots. No matter what the record is, they play us hard. So we got the best version of them today, and I tip my hat. Congrats to the fans.
All right, you get a little musical background with that too. You're welcome for that. I didn't even add that in on purpose. That just came out by itself. How about that? So the Bills just decided after the game, and look, some of this is, I think, the things you say when you lose a game like that. It is, hey, it's give credit to the other team. You get whooped like the Bills got whooped. You'll find most players will tell you that, hey, part of that is because they just wanted it more. They played better. They played harder. I think that's actually like an actual diagnosis to what happened. So, fair play to the Bills on that. But I don't understand how the Bills did not have more fire for that game. When you think about all the things that went into the importance of what the Bills were doing yesterday, they are not cruising to another division title. Far from it. They are looking up at the Patriots and have been for weeks. So their margin for error before yesterday was already on the low side. And then in that game, look, of all the games the Bills are going to play where they're supposed to win, they're favored again by 5 points this week at home against Tampa. They play Pittsburgh on the road next week, probably will be a favorite. Houston on the road the Thursday after that, almost certainly will be a favorite. Cincinnati at home. Now, Joe Burrow came back to practice today. Maybe he's available for that game against the Bills. We'll see. But regardless, the Bills will be favored in that game. All of these next 4 games where the Bills will be a favorite, not nearly as important as that Miami game, because when you lose that extra division game, it makes it that much harder for you to take the tiebreaker against the Patriots. So not only were the Bills just trailing in the division, but you've taken that deficit and made it a little bigger because you did not take care of business against a team that you were favored by more than a touchdown against. I can't imagine why the Bills would go into this game without the right amount of motivation. Maybe were they too overconfident against the Dolphins? They'd won, the last 6, 7 in a row? It had been 4 years since they lost the Dolphins game. A team that Josh Allen normally dominates. We talk about it all the time. I even made jokes in my prediction video. It's like Godzilla when Josh Allen walks into South Florida. Deion Dawkins said it there. He said, look, we always get the best shot from our division teams. Those teams always play us hard. Well, you know what? Everybody plays you hard, Deion. Every team in this league looks at the Bills as one of those games you circle on the schedule when it comes out in May. So this isn't anything new. The Bills should not be surprised that the Dolphins came up with a really good swing at them. I just don't understand how you, and look, I do understand that you play 17 games, and I say this all the time, you're not going to be up for all 17. It's just impossible. The Bills will tell you, and they've become very good at, we treat every game the same. I think this helps them when they play the Chiefs, when they play the Ravens, when they play in the playoffs. Every single game is the same. You stay flatlined. You do the same thing over and over and over. But these are still 53 human beings. They're not always going to be at the same exact level. Some games you're just going to be flat. This was clearly that. But this wasn't just the Bills showing up a little bit flat or a little bit off. They were nowhere close to ready. Not at the start of the game, not at the middle of the game, not at the start of the second half, not at the end of the game. Yeah, Josh Allen did some Josh Allen things that made this game a little bit relevant at the end. Made it somewhat interesting. But the Dolphins ended up making way more plays and clearly having way more interest in winning this game, even though they have nothing to gain. Their GM was already fired. Their head coach seems like he's out the door. It is inexcusable that Sean McDermott did not have his team anywhere near as ready to go as the 2-7 team on the other side. Not to mention the 2-7 team that began the game by taking a penalty and then needing to burn a timeout. So whatever fire the Dolphins apparently had, it didn't have them focused enough in 2 tries to get the first play of the game snapped. They took a flag and then they took a timeout. And that team was still more ready than the Bills by a lot. Sean McDermott has done a lot of things, and I think most of us in the media will defend him more than a lot of fans will like. Because there are, a lot of fans, fan is short for fanatic. People will say weird things when they don't think their coach is good enough. But this was one of the lower points for the McDermott era, the McDermott Bean era for that matter. Because not having the roster in a spot where they can overcome whatever flatness the team came out with is certainly a part of this loss. But this part of it, not having the team ready to go, this is a McDermott issue. It is, again, inexcusable how top to bottom flat this team was and outcoached and unprepared. I mean, the first snap of the game, just from an X and O point of view, and we're going to get this in a minute. The first snap of the game, the Bills run basically slant or stick routes across the field. So left to right, all short routes. The Dolphins were zoned up in short space, in the intermediate space, a perfect coverage to take that away. I mean, right from the first snap of the game, it looked like the Dolphins coaches were ready to run circles around the Bills. And they spent the next 60 minutes doing exactly that. This team cannot afford anymore to have a game like this. They can't afford to show up and be outwanted by the other team, by any of these other teams, and especially not a team like the Dolphins. A team that you have owned, a team that has been dominated by most of the league. Now, granted, look, there were some signs of this. Miami did hammer Atlanta 34-10. And a lot of the things that they did in the Atlanta game, they repeated against Buffalo. Stopped the run, made plays on offense, forced some turnovers, more so against the Bills. So it wasn't like this game came totally out of nowhere, but this is still a 3-7 team. A 3-7 team that got embarrassed by a Ravens team that's still kind of rebuilding. Their injury situation isn't much better than what Buffalo is at right now. So if the Bills again, and look, we've talked about this enough, and I know fans have talked about it, that was not anywhere close to a championship performance. Some of those things happen. Look, there are games where the ball doesn't bounce your way. The Bills had a couple of fumbles. They've been good at recovering them. In this game, it didn't happen. And it was your best ball handlers, Josh Allen, James Cook, who were responsible for the turnovers. You're going to have bad games like that. You're going to have turnovers. You had a rookie at corner, Max Hairston. He got beat for a long touchdown by a great receiver. That's going to happen. But for the team to say afterward that, yeah, I think the other guys wanted it more. And the general nonchalance with which the Bills addressed that issue was also kind of head-scratching. Now, look, again, some of that is the way players act after a big loss. You give credit to the other team. You don't make it sound like it's the end of the world, because it's not. The Bills have 8 more games left. And you do acknowledge that if a game like that is going to happen, if you're going to be favored by 8 or 9 points and lose by 17, among the different things that you did not do well, I'm sure, was not show up with the right attitude. But the other things in football, you feel like there's more control over. Or let me put it this way. The other parts of this game that the Bills lost, you feel like you can understand those more. Those are football. And yes, you're not going to show up ready to go for all 17, but the level the Bills showed up at was as egregious as it gets. And that, to me, was the biggest Sean McDermott failure of that game yesterday. Just inexcusable top to bottom. Now, like I said, I want to talk about the Joe Brady game plan here for a little bit, because off the bat, the Dolphins seem to be in his head. Like I said, first play of the game, Bills call short routes. The Dolphins are right there to take it away. And there wasn't a lot about what Joe Brady did in this game that made you feel pretty good. The one good play that I liked, at least from the first half, was the long Dalton Kincaid in-breaker. Really nice route as against cover 3. You're trying to attack the middle safety. You run one receiver across his face, kind of drag him out of the way, run Kincaid behind him, off of play action. All very beautifully done. The throw wasn't great by Josh Allen, and Kincaid got a little lucky on the catch because it was knocked away, but then after the ball dropped, kind of landed in his lap. But on the whiteboard, that was a great piece of scheming by Joe Brady. Everything else I've seen so far I haven't liked. Like I said, I'm only through the first half. The 4th down play call, not only is it very similar to what the Chiefs did last week, or what the Bills did to the Chiefs end of last week, to where if I'm coaching for Miami, I look at that and say, hey, you know, when you got the running back in the eye or directly behind the quarterback and they play action, run the running back at you, be ready to cover him. I mean, that seems like an easy piece of scouting for something that you did. It's like the 3rd or 4th last offensive play you ran in the last game. And I know the Bills dressed it up with a different formation. It was heavier personnel against Miami than it was against the Chiefs. But Miami was clearly ready for it. On top of that, the way the route goes and what you're trying to do there is you run play action, you roll Josh Allen to the right, and you want to give him 3 options. A short option, an intermediate option, and a deep option. And they have that. You've got James Cook short, Terrell Shavers intermediate, and Dawson Knox, I think it was deep. But then on the same side, they run Jackson Hawes on a seam route. And while in theory that would create space, the reality is when you have Dawson Knox and Jackson Hawes, your 2 least athletic tight ends, no offense to them, both running deep routes in the vicinity of each other, you're really not creating space with either guy. If you wanted to put a receiver there and maybe let Dawson Knox run the intermediate route, I think that would have made more sense. You'd have more opportunity for separation. But with Knox and Hawes lumbering 15, 20 yards downfield, those guys just aren't separating from anybody. And then the third part of that play that I didn't like is if you're trying to run play action, faking a sneak, right? Where is the defensive flow going to go to? It's the interior guys who are all going to jump on the center to try and prevent Josh Allen from getting that 1 yard. Well, if you're going to fake there and then throw it, you should throw directly over where that flow is coming from. Throw at one of the basic things you do against a blitz is throw at it. If a defensive back rushes at you, you throw over his head because that space is now vacated. Well, it works the same way logically with this play. If you're running a fake and a sneak and the 4 defensive linemen and the 2 linebackers are all going to crash the center, you got to throw over their head. You don't roll out to the outside to the part of the defense where they're not really playing the sneak. No corner is going to dive in to try and stop Josh Allen on a sneak. It does occasionally happen. Some teams will bring the safety up. But if you want to attack where that flow is coming from, you go right at it. You go over the top of it. So not only was that play call something that the team had just seen, something the team could easily have scouted, not only was it not spaced out properly, or at least you're not using the players who could space it out properly, and then you're not even making logical sense of how to work a play action in your favor. The Bills did it again later. There was a Dalton Kincaid catch, a play that worked, where the Bills faked a running play, but the running play is a counter. So it's a play where Josh Allen fakes a handoff to the left, turns around, hands it to the right. He actually does it this way, but I'm on camera here. It doesn't make much sense. So if you fake this way, if you fake left to run right, but then you play action back to the left, you're hoping that the linebackers are so aware of this play that you have admittedly run a lot that they're going to say, all right, I've seen this before, I'm going right. And you're trying to double cross them, basically. Don't think that much in football. If you're going to run play action, fake one way, go back the other way. The Bills got away with it because Dalton Kincaid made a heck of a catch in traffic and Josh Allen made a really good throw. But again, what Joe Brady's trying to draw up just isn't making a lot of logical sense. So on top of the fact that the Dolphins, I think, had a better game plan in general for what the Bills do most often, the tricky stuff, the bonus stuff, the added in, the specialized stuff that Brady had wasn't good in this game. So the Bills just didn't have enough answers, with this pass game. And again, Josh Allen is a part of this, not reading the defense quite well. The receivers we talked about ad nauseum are a lot of it. But in this game, Joe Brady just did not have enough answers. And again, the stuff that he tried to go next level on didn't work, and laughably so. Just like face palming level of what are we trying to do here? Of all the things that went wrong in this Bills game yesterday, the one that I kind of land on as the biggest concern is how Miami stopped that Bills run game. Because the Dolphins came into this game 30th in the NFL, and I think the stat was yards per game. I mean, they're every rushing game stat, rushing defense stat the Dolphins have is very not good. Again, their last 4 games, their run defense got better, and they were still giving up $110 a game. And really, all of that improvement is one really good game against the Falcons. They shut Bijan Robinson down. They held Atlanta to like less than 50 yards rushing. Part of that is because Miami was up early enough and was able to take Atlanta out of what they wanted to do. Part of it was Kirk Cousins, not Michael Penix, and Cousins was terrible. But that run defense played really, really well. Unusually well for Miami. But from the Bills' point of view, as much as we've spent a lot of this first half hour of the show talking about all the issues with the passing game and whether Brian Dable can fix it and what Joe Brady's issues were against the Dolphins, if the Bills can't run the ball, they ain't going anywhere. And if you can't run the ball against Miami, how are you supposed to be expected to run the ball against 3 playoff teams? The Colts defense is very good. The Broncos defense is very good. The Chargers defense, if you watched them last night against Pittsburgh, is very good. The Chiefs, we know, can be a problem in January. The Patriots have already been a problem. This is the playoff field for the Bills. Whether they win the division, get into the wild card, these are the teams they're probably going to have to play. Throw the Houston Texans in there if they somehow find their way into the playoffs. So if the Bills can't sustain a running game against Miami, how are they winning 3 games in January? Because even if they drop Brian Dable into this or come up with some magic fix to the passing game, we've seen there clearly is a ceiling on what the Bills can do on that side of the ball offensively. But if the Miami Dolphins can make James Cook a non-factor in a football game, how are you getting through 3 games in the postseason? How are you getting through 1 game in the postseason? And I know the Bills just succeeded against the Chiefs, ran for a bunch of yards, so obviously it's possible. But if that Dolphins 30th ranked run defense is good enough to take your fastball, and the run game is now the Bills' fastball, and basically hit it all over the park, that to me is why I look at the Bills in the playoffs in the largest degree and say I have very little confidence the Bills can have a long postseason run. It's not the passing game that struggled all year. It's not the defense that's been dealing with injuries and probably was never going to be an elite unit. I think it had a chance to be an above average unit. And if Ed Oliver comes back at any point late in the postseason, maybe they could get back to that. But what the Bills have done well all year has been James Cook and that offensive line and how Josh Allen operates the offense and obviously that part of it. And Miami totally erased that. Now, the Bills are going to run the ball much more times this year. They're going to have more success, whether it's against Tampa or Pittsburgh or Houston or somebody, probably multiple somebodies. So it's not like this run game has been totally shut down for the rest of the year. But the fact that this is in the bag for the Bills, that they can face the 30th best run defense and not be able to get anything going, not have an impact at all, that to me is why I look at this team and think about January and wonder what the formula is going to be, what the solution is going to be. Because we've seen that the passing game probably can't save them. The defense is probably too banged up to save them. The thing the Bills are going to have to build their playoff foundation upon is the run game. And they couldn't get it going anywhere against a 3-7 team with one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. All right. Sean McDermott said yesterday, and he's right about this, it is a week-to-week league. The Bills will be better. There will be more that will be a part of what this team is about. And we will talk about it for sure. All right. When we come back, we're going to have, you see this, Caleb Carr will join me for sure. Also want to talk a little bit about what might be an elite troll job by Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel with Bills fans yesterday. Don't know if it's true, but we'll tell you the story after this. My name is Thad Brown. This is the Endgame. You're watching Rochester First. All the cool kids, they call it Rock One. All right, I changed out of the all-red background. It was just driving me nuts. It looked like I was broadcasting from Darth Vader's home planet or something like that. So we just went blue and purple because it's a combination I haven't tried before. So hope you enjoy that better. I know I like it better. Thad Brown here with you back on the Endgame. This is Rochester First. Got a good tweet. And by the way, I'm at post on X. I'm at Thad Brown 7 on X. If you ever want to interact, question what I have to say, respond, whatever. This is Steve Irwin. You find him here on here. Where'd you go, Stevie? All right. Steve Irwin. Let me see one more. You got to be here somewhere. Nope, don't see it. Anyway, I know it exists. I read it. I even responded to it. The point he made was that even if the Bills bring Brian Daboll on, and Brian Daboll, of course, fired by the Giants today, even if you bring Brian Daboll in, and let's say Sean McDermott, he get along now, which, again, I don't feel like there's enough animosity left from whatever the problem was when he left the first time that it would prevent Sean McDermott from adding Brian Daboll to the staff to help. But the point that Steve Irwin, oh, there it is right there. Steve Irwin, 7461. He says, I think the chance of Sean getting Daboll in the building is next to zero. Sean knows within 6 months the fan base will be calling for Daboll to replace Sean. There's no world I see Sean bringing him in. It's a fair point. And Sean McDermott is one of the safer coaches in the NFL because of how much Terry Pegula believes in he and Brandon Beane. And the suspicion is because of how much trouble Terry Pegula has been having with his hockey team that he wouldn't want to create a new problem with the Bills. But with a guy who, like I said, in Brian Daboll, has been to the playoffs as a head coach, who has had success in Buffalo, who is liked by Josh Allen, which is going to be, if the Bills ever make a change at head coach with Josh Allen as the quarterback, that will certainly be high on the list of necessary qualities for the new coach. Brian Daboll checks a lot of those boxes. It wouldn't be out of this world for Terry Pegula to say, look, Sean McDermott's had 5, 6, 7 chances in the playoffs. We need a different voice, but at least this different voice in Daboll would be something that Pegula has a lot of confidence will work well in a lot of the ways that it has to work well in Buffalo. He's not a brand new guy you're dropping in and wondering if he's going to get along with the staff, be a success in the media, get along with their quarterback. Brian Daboll is going to check all those boxes. So Brian Daboll is one of the few people in the world who would be a legit threat to Sean McDermott on the staff. Now, it doesn't mean that Sean McDermott would say no. It doesn't mean that Brian Daboll would even want to cause that problem. But it is, I think, definitely something that would be in the way of a Brian Daboll reunion in Buffalo. We'll see. The Bills don't have a lot of answers available to them right now. There's not a lot of things, like we said at the beginning of the show, that you can change right now other than the offensive coordinator. And Brian Daboll is a guy that certainly has the mind and the relationship and the ability to get the best out of Josh Allen that could be helpful to this team. So we'll see. Okay, I posted this on my X feed as well. I don't know if it's true. Can't show it to you because of restrictions, rights, licenses, whatever. But there is a picture floating around of Mike McDaniel driving by the elbow room, allegedly, after yesterday's Dolphins win to troll Bills fans. That has been the rumor, what everybody has thought. Now, if it's true, the general reaction has been this is an elite troll job. This is one of the best things a head coach could do. As to whether it's true, let's start with that. I posted a little bit because I saw a few of the Dolphins beat writers I follow posted about it, didn't totally swat it down as something that's not accurate. There's a reporter who works for a local TV station down there who also talked about it a little bit. So I think there's reason to think it might be true, but the main problem with it is that the picture is in the daylight, or at least it appears to be in the daylight. So right off the bat, it looks like something that doesn't happen. It's not happening at the right time of day, because obviously even in Miami, the game gets over 4:30, 5 o'clock. It's going to be dark by the time you get anywhere. It's going to be nice and warm and sunny, but it's going to be dark. So is it a camera trick? I don't know. But I have not seen anything that says it's not an actual picture of Mike McDaniel trolling Bills fans driving by. If you don't know, the elbow room is like the popular spot in South Florida for Bills fans. It is the place to gather if you're there on a Saturday. It's also, if you're the head coach of the Dolphins and want to troll Dolphins fans, it would be the place you'd want to go to on Sunday night, because even then, there are still a number of Bills fans who are probably there. And let me bring in Caleb Carr right now to talk about this, because one of the things that we talked about yesterday while we were watching the end of the game, and I brought it up to you, was that if you are a Dolphins player or coach and you have been on the short end of Bills games for pretty much the duration of your existence in Miami, there are not many players, I'm sure, who go back to the last time the Dolphins got a win, which I think was 21. It was the Heat game, the 21-19 game. You are going to have a degree of angst that you want to unload on the Bills on the way to the locker room. I thought the Bradley Chubb taunting penalty might have been that. Mike McDaniel, who knows where he's going to coach again, if he's going to be a head coach ever again after this season. This was maybe his last moment of glory, so I can get that. Have you seen this, and what was your reaction to hearing about this today?
I saw the picture. I agree with you that it just doesn't. I mean, Mike McDaniel,
the more I think about it, it's got to be fake, right?
He would have had to leave. Well, I don't think the picture is fake.
Okay.
I think what they're saying the picture is fake, because they're saying the picture is after the game.
Right.
I think that's fake.
Okay.
I think it's very likely, knowing I don't know Mike McDaniel personally, but seeing him in the media, seeing how he's interacted and how he's, what was it? I wish it was colder, or they were like wearing those T-shirts during practice before their game up in Buffalo where it snowed, and I'm pretty sure they got whooped. Like things like that, it wouldn't surprise me if on like Sunday morning, maybe Sunday morning is too much, Saturday afternoon, he drove by and that's when the picture was taken. That wouldn't surprise me. If he was like, let's see what's going on over here, maybe we'll heckle a couple guys. But I also feel like that would have been we would have seen more pictures and videos if that had happened.
Right. The pregame heckling is not the play. If you're the Dolphin head coach.
But if you're Mike McDaniel, what do you have to lose? You're Mike McDaniel. We've seen him do things like this in the past. So
Not like this.
Maybe not to that extent, but I wouldn't put it past him to go that far.
Separate of whether it's accurate or not. I know most people on X, because that's the reaction, that's the general theme on X was, this was awesome. What a great troll job. I love my coach. To me, this is below the line.
Yes, I agree.
This is not professional. This is not, generally as a head coach or a player, how many times have we heard, even to the media, well, you don't play the game. You don't know. You're not at our level.
Mm-hmm.
So why would the head coach then go down to the fan level to troll a team that's had their number for years, that is still having a wildly better season this year, there's no benefit there. Even if he was 10-0 and trolling Bills fans, I would still look at this and say, come on, man. Be a professional.
He shouldn't. But the point I'm trying to make is, if a head coach was going to, if you told me a head coach is going to do this
of the
tomorrow,
current 32,
who are you putting your money on? It would be Mike McDaniel. I think he's the one. I would say he's the one that's going to do it.
I'm going through head coaches right now.
Because who else? Well, who else is in a situation where?
Well, forget about the situation. Like just in general, personality-wise.
Personality-wise, him. He already, to me, wins it off of personality. But again, I mean, I think you have to look at, like, if someone were to do it right now, given their situation, I mean, he's probably on the hottest seat right now.
Sure.
So, and pair that with his personality, he doesn't care. He's just gonna go drive by real quick.
Guys,
so I don't think he did. Or I don't think he should have, but I do think if a head coach were going to, he's the one that would do it.
Pete Carroll would. I'm just going through guys who he's high on that list too.
Yeah.
Other than that, some of the younger guys I don't know as well. That might be the only one that I can't
think of another that like stands out to me, or at least one that's like vibrant enough in the media that I know well enough to say that they would.
I could see Sean McVay in a world potentially doing it, but I feel reachy with that already.
Yeah, that one feels a little. He feels like maybe someone who would drive by like post game. Like if they crushed a team that everyone was saying they weren't going to beat. He feels like maybe that, but he's not someone that would go pregame, like before the game.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Pete Carroll would. Mike McDaniel would. You're right. Those are probably the only two guys.
I agree with Pete Carroll.
Those are the only two guys. All right. Time for our weekly segment every single Monday. I bring someone in and we talk about something weird, wild, wacky, fun, interesting, something that got our attention from the weekend in sports. We call it, you see this? So Caleb, I'll let you go first. What was the thing that caught your attention this week?
Ours are kind of similar. We talked a little bit before about yours. Mine is, so originally 2-6 Wisconsin upset the 23 ranked team in the country, Washington. They won 13-10. But the weirdest stat of that game is that Sean West, the freshman punter, led the team in passing yards. He was 1 for 1, 24 yards. They went for it on a fake punt. It was the first drive of the second half. They were down 10-3, so they kind of needed to get something going. Obviously, their passing game, they had 3 other quarterbacks playing. The Wisconsin Badgers had 3 other quarterbacks play for them. They combined 5 of 17 for 24 yards.
Jeez.
So they could not get anything going in the passing game. They weren't really doing outstanding in the running game either. I think they only combined for 157 total yards, which isn't anything crazy when you look at what some of these other teams are doing. But it was the first drive of the second half. They were down 10-3. They did a fake punt on 4th and 10. And Sean West had a 24-yard completion, his only completion of the game, to Jackson Acker. They then ended up getting in a 4th and 20 situation later in the drive because of penalties and sacks. So they had to punt for real that time. But then on that following Washington possession off that punt, they fumbled deep in Wisconsin territory. So that set up like Wisconsin needed like 7 yards for a touchdown. So that ties the game at 10. Then Washington gets the ball back. They're backed up. They're 3 and out deep in Washington territory. They have a bad punt, like a 15-yard punt return from Wisconsin. They get 20-some more yards, kick a 32-yard field goal to go up 13-10, and then to start the fourth quarter, they blocked a Washington 50-yard field goal to keep it 13-10, and then from there it was just nobody could do anything. Nobody could move the ball. It was kind of like a midfield game, punting back and forth. I think Washington had a couple turnover on downs as they were trying to get something going. But yeah, so Wisconsin upsets Washington 13-10 to move to 3-6 with Sean West leading the team with 24 passing yards.
Did the quarterbacks have injury issues or were they just bad?
I think one of them had an injury issue. The first one. I think the other 2 just were bad.
That was kind of like the Jets-Browns game yesterday. We were talking about this where the Jets did not have a single receiver who had more than 1 reception. Mm-hmm. The stat I saw with that game, I didn't remember what the exact numbers were, but it's something like the Browns were the first team in the history of the NFL to allow like less than 175 yards and not turn over the ball, I think is what the 2 numbers were. And the record was teams who had done that previously were 225-0.
Jeez.
So whatever the Browns did, whatever that combo was yesterday, the Browns were the first team to do it ever.
In the NFL specifically, there's been a few of those this year where it's been like, maybe not first time ever, but like first time in 50 years where it's just like weird stats like that. I mean, the Bills had the one with the Ravens earlier in the year where that was like the first time in forever that a comeback of that big a margin happened in that short a time span. There's been a few of those. The NFL and then college football now, they've both just been wacky.
It's been, the other thing too is that we have the technology now to research these things. The big engines that have been covering like Pro Football Reference or places like that have enough data now that we can go back far enough and say, wow, this has only happened one time out of the last 1,300 that this situation has occurred. So thank you, technology. All right. Mine is also, like you said, it has something to do with a punter. And you wanted to do this one because it's just that awesome. So USC, what they did against Northwestern is their punter, Sam Johnson, wears number 80. Their third string quarterback is Sam Heward. He normally wears number 7. And by the way, for people at home who are watching, the pictures with this story are going to be very limited. This is the only one I have, so I hope you enjoy it. So what USC did before the Northwestern game is they changed the third string quarterback's number also to 80. So what they could do is on the first punt of the game, I don't know what the down was. I think it was like 4th and 6 near midfield. They ran out the third string quarterback as the punter and ran a fake punt with that quarterback. Now, I heard about this and I thought this was like the dirtiest thing ever. And why was this allowed? Well, as it turns out, it should not have been allowed. The Big Ten came out and said that that is a penalty, that you cannot have the same player, 2 players wear the same number and play the same position, because there are so many players in college rosters right now, over 100, that many teams have players who wear the same number. But what it is one guy, like let's say the number is 24. One guy on offense will wear it, one guy on defense will wear it, so there's no confusing. And this is the rule, is that you can't have someone wear the same number and play the same position. So what USC did with running the third string quarterback out to stand in as the punter, that is not illegal. What they should have gotten a penalty for is then sending out the punter when they had to punt the next time, because now that's a second player with the same number in that position.
That's what I was going to ask. You said it was the first punt of the game?
First punt of the game,
okay,
yeah.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. So technically, him going out there, that's not the penalty. It's the following punt that would have been the penalty.
Right.
Okay.
But
that's what I was going to ask.
As dirty as it gets, though, even before I knew what the rule was, I looked at it and said, come on, this can't be something we're really okay with doing.
Yeah, I looked into it a little bit, and I think who were they playing? Who was USC?
Northwestern.
The Northwestern head coach said after the game, he was like, he was saying it was on him, because he was like, yeah, I should have seen that. We should have been able to tell that. I mean, people were like, oh, they only got away with it too because USC doesn't have names on the back of their jerseys. They just have numbers. So that helps. So yeah, I agree with you. That's as dirty as it gets while still kind of being clean, if that makes sense.
And clever.
Like clever.
Yeah.
You're like, you're jumping through a lot of hoops to stay clean, but the end result, like you said, is still kind of,
Speaking of the end result, so they did get a touchdown on the drive. Mm-hmm. They ended up winning 38-17. Didn't really matter. It was like, I think they went up 14-7. Northwestern came back to make it 14-14. So it wasn't like they gained some huge score advantage or changed the game or anything. They scored a touchdown, but it was close for a little while, and then USC pulled away later. The other caveat to this story, the reason I liked it also, so the game was being called by Jason Benetti. I think it was a Fox game. And he calls it as a fake punt, thinking that the punter, Sam Johnson, was the one who threw the pass. I guess they go to break, or maybe later on the broadcast, someone tells them that, no, that was the third string quarterback, Sam Heward. Well, Sam Heward's dad is Brock Heward, former NFL quarterback. He had like a cup of coffee in the league, was a longer term backup, really good college quarterback. Well, Brock Heward is Jason Benetti's broadcast partner for their games. They work together quite a bit. So he's on the air. You can kind of see him like doing the hands in the head kind of thing, or head in the hands kind of thing, thinking, yeah, I just missed my guy's son playing in the game and called it wrong. So I'm going to be hearing all about it on the phone. I didn't hear if anything did happen from that, but the whole sequence, I'm sure. The whole sequence was fun from that point of view to see Jason Benetti kind of go through it on the air. Like, this is not going to go well for me later on today.
Gee, I remember originally seeing that, like, cause it was trending on Twitter, and I was just like, Okay, fake punt. Because I didn't realize there was I was like, oh, they just brought in. Because people will do that sometimes. Teams will just bring in the backup quarterback and hope that nobody notices. Different numbers, nameplates, everything, but just hope nobody notices.
Right.
And it's actually worked a handful of times, especially in high school. But when I looked into it, I was like, no, that was same number, same position, and just they really went deep. They really, really went deep into this one.
Didn't the Jets fake a punt against the Bills by just bringing Breece Hall on the field and no one noticed? Or was that a different Jets game? I thought I saw that with the Jets this year.
That might be where Breece Hall was the punter?
No, he wasn't the punter. He was the up guy. He was the blocker.
Oh, I'm sure that's happened.
Yeah.
I'm sure that happens all the time, yeah, because a lot of times people aren't.
You're not paying
I mean,
attention.
you should be paying attention.
Right.
And
then,
I'm sure after that situation, they do for the rest of the season. But
and going back to the Northwestern head coach, I appreciate him taking the blame for that. But there's no way that dude is scouring the roster to be like, well, let me make sure the numbers for all the quarterbacks are the same this week. And I know they have 35 coaches on the staff, so you probably could assign someone, and I guarantee Northwestern has assigned someone to do that. Your job now is to read the roster of the other team to see where the numbers might match up to where you might have a problem. But there's no way to expect the coach to do that, which is why, my initial reaction is that's not as dirty as it gets, but something that clearly should not have been allowed.
yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for us today here on the Endgame.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.